Om Shri Sai Ram, offering my humble pranams at the lotus feet of our most loving Swami, respected elders, my dear brothers and sisters. I am Sai Prakash and with me is Ganesh at the studios of Shri Sathya Sai Media Center, Prasanthi Nilayam. We welcome all of you to this evening Satsang, which is titled Divine Mysteries. Now in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna has said, Madbhakta Madgata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam Katayantascha Mam Nityam Tushyanticha Ramanticha. That means my devotees, they love talking about me. They love talking about my glories, about my mahimas. And they are happy doing that. Yes, it's always nice when we talk about Swami, when we talk about his glories. Our hearts are filled with love, our hearts are filled with Ananda. But this topic, divine mysteries, yes, if you look at it, are we qualified to talk about divine mysteries? And the answer is an emphatic no. No. It is definitely, we are not qualified to talk about divine mysteries. But what are we trying to do in this feeble attempt? What we are trying to do is, we are trying to present to you some of these mysteries that Swami has partially demystified in many of his discourses. Exactly. So Swami has touched upon some of these divine mysteries and we would like to present them to you. But what is the use of doing this? What is the benefit from doing this? One beautiful thing that happens, which said Gyatum Drashtum Praveshtum, when you know these divine mysteries and when you understand them to the level of our ability and when you are sincere about it, you start experiencing. So when you try to understand these divine secrets, the secret behind this creation, the secret behind these divine mysteries, the experience is very real. Exactly. The experience is very personal and very real, and that is something worth exploring. And in the course of this satsang today, we will be having two aspects. On one side you have words and on one side you have explanations and descriptions. On the other side we are talking about an experiential aspect. We pray to Swami that he guides us through this Parayanam.
Very good, Prakash. First of all, I would like to add to what you have told. An experience is to be experienced.
Right.
Any number of words, any number of feelings cannot explain that experience.
Right.
As it is very, very beautifully said in the Anandavalli, Sayeko manusha anandaha teye shatam manusha anandaha Sayeko manusha gandharvana manandaha. In this way, Anandavalli takes you through the different stages of Ananda, starting from Manushyananda to Manusha Gandharvananda and through 9 different stages, and finally after Prajapati Ananda, Brihaspati Ananda, then it makes you reach Brahmananda. And each type of Ananda is 100-fold the previous type of Ananda.
Right.
So when you calculate Brahmananda, we find it is totally out of reach. For every small thing, as Swami tells, you keep telling Brahmanandam, Brahmanandam, but are we really experiencing it?
Right.
So when we talk of this experience, Ananda, Brahmananda, we shall have a small example or a small taste of that experience.
Right.
It happened with Kasturi ji. Once when Kasturi Garu was with Swami in the interview room, Swami went into a deep trance. So when he went into the trance, Kasturi Garu kept observing him. After a while, when Swami returned from the trance, Kasturi Garu very, very lovingly asked, Swami, where did you go? Then Swami explained to him, there was a devotee in Dehradun. His name was Krishnamurti. He often came to Swami. His mother on her deathbed, wanted to have a glimpse of the Lord. So in all his compassion and mercy, Swami went and granted her darshan. So as Swami was narrating this, Kasturi Garu asked Swami, Swami, can I note down these details on a piece of paper? Then Swami knew what was going on in his mind. He knew that he was not convinced. He told, yes, you note down all the details. Wait for another 3-4 days and you will get the confirmation. After 3-4 days, a letter had come to Swami. Swami didn't open it. He waited for Kasturi Garu to come. As Kasturi Garu entered, he told, Kasturi, check the letter and cross-verify it with your slip of paper where you have noted the details. And then when Kasturi Garu opened the letter, both the details were matching. And then Kasturi Garu burst out into joy. He told, we are with Bhagawan, Ananda, Ananda, and he left the place. He went to his home and he did not even bother to talk to his children. He told, Ananda, Ananda, we have seen Bhagawan, we have seen Bhagawan. He didn't eat anything, he didn't drink anything. And then the experience continued. After 3-4 days, when all the family members were stunned at what was happening, Swami came through during the bhajan time through the veranda and then asked their family members, how is Kasturi? Swami, he is totally lost. And then Swami told, when you know the truth, that is what happens to you. Don't worry, he will come back. And after a few days, Swami called him into the interview room, gave him prasadam, and he was back to normal. So that is the experience. So then, Anandavalli takes you through that levels of experience, and finally it tells, Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. Neither walk, speech, nor the fathoming of your mind can explain that experience.
Absolutely. In fact, they are all words. So there are these divine mysteries which have been, expounded in many of these Vedas, the Upanishads. Like there are so many shlokas on the creation of the universe, which are explicitly given in the Rig Veda, the Atharva Veda, the Keno Upanishad, and then Aitreya Upanishad. And of course, many of us know that the Mandukya Upanishad speaks about Om. A lot of these Upanishads and Vedas are able to describe the events. They are able to describe the Mahimas and the mysteries of the divine. But experiencing them, we have had this great good fortune because we have lived with Bhagawan. For example, if you take the mystery of creation, and as students of science, we know that time and space are two parameters which are used for describing creation and the Big Bang, etc. But when Swami is here with us, you suddenly see that the Lord is beyond space and time. There is a beautiful incident where Swami shows that he is actually beyond space and time. So this was when Swami was 14 years of age. When Swami just threw his books and says, I am no longer your Sathya, I have work to do, my devotees are calling me. At the same time, there was a devotee in England, in London. Now this is Mr. Gogoi. He was in Assam, he was from a lower middle class family, and there was an engineer from London, and a Britisher, who took some of these youth to England to train them in mechanics and to train them in the art of engineering. So he wanted to improve their skills. So he gave them scholarship and took all of them to London. And this person was a very sincere person, but unfortunately for him, at that time, the war started. And when the war started, the air raid sirens would go off, and immediately everybody had to rush into the bunkers, and they had to wait for the siren to come again when they can come out. And every time he would sit down to study, this air raid sirens would come, and he would get very upset. He would say, oh, I have come here to study, I have come here to put my best efforts into this whole learning, but I am being disturbed by this. And on one day he thought, let me not go out. What is the surety that the bomb will fall here and it will fall on my house and then it will kill me? So let me not go out and let me stay inside. So what he did was, when the air raid siren came, he went under his cot, he covered himself and sat there silently. suddenly he heard the footsteps of an air siren warden. So there is an air siren warden who comes and he knocks heavily on the door. He says, "Don't waste time, come out immediately." So he rushes out, and then he got scared actually, and then he takes him and puts him in the bunker and closes the bunker, and he stands outside. The moment he stands outside, they could hear some of the bombing. And after the next siren came, when they came out, he was shocked to see that his entire house was razed to the ground. And this air siren warden was also not there. He felt so sad. He thought that he had also passed away in the bombing. And so that's how this incident happened. And then he came back to India, and then he worked in his job. He did several jobs, and then in fact he worked with in the movement with Mahatma Gandhi started as well. Several years have gone by, and he retired as well. After his retirement, he came to Mumbai, and he was there, and Swami was visiting Dharmakshetra. So he, out of curiosity, he thought, let me go and see who Satya Sai Baba is. And so he came and he sat in the last row. And just before Swami came out, a volunteer came up to him and he said, "Swami has sent me to tell you that you should come and sit in the front." He was surprised. He said, "This is the first time I'm coming here. How does Baba know me?" So he came and sat in the front. And when Swami came for darshan, Swami came straight to him and Swami said, "Now it's time for you to go back to Prasanthi Nilayam. You should come to Prasanthi Nilayam and start leading a spiritual life. That is the reason I have saved you." So this man was totally taken aback. He said, "This is the first time I'm meeting Baba. This is a tall claim." And then Swami said, "Do you remember that air raid marshal, the air raid warden?" He said, "Yes, Swami, I remember. Poor thing, he passed away when the bombing happened." Swami said, "No, I am that air raid warden. I saved you then so that you can come now and lead your life on the spiritual path." So time, space, all these things are parameters which are tools which the Lord uses. But when the Lord wants, He can surpass all of them. He can go beyond all of them. There are so many ways in which Swami teaches us these divine mysteries. So giving an experience like this is one of those methods.
I think it's now time for us to start going through those methods which Swami had used to teach all of us about creation, why he had created this universe, and the mystery of that creation.
Right.
So we shall now go into two of such letters which Swami had written to his devotees, which unravel this mystery.
Right.
So the first letter is written to Mr. Charles Penn. The letter goes thus: "Come one, come all, see in me yourself, for I see myself in all of you. You are my life, my breath, my soul. You are all my forms. When I love you, I love myself. When you love yourself, you love me. I separated myself from myself so that I may be myself. I separated myself from myself and became all of this so that I may be myself. I wanted to be myself, that is, Ananda Swarup, Prema Swarup, that is what I am, and I wanted to be that. How can I be Ananda Swarup and Prema Swarup, and get Ananda and give Ananda, and get Prema and give Prema? And to whom am I to give Ananda, and to whom am I to give Prema? So I did this. I separated myself from myself and became all this."
Beautiful, beautiful. So this is like the purpose of creation.
Yes.
Like Swami is stating why he did this creation.
Now I think we shall go to the process of that creation.
Okay.
This was a letter written to Mr. R.R. Chatterjee, who was a part of the Satya Sai Seva organizations of Calcutta. And the letters go thus: "There was no one to know who I am till I created this world at my pleasure with one word. Immediately, mountains rose up, rivers started running, earth below and sky over its head, oceans, seas, lands and watersheds, sun, moon and desert sands sprang up from nowhere to prove my existence. Then came all forms of human beings, mankind, beasts and birds, speaking, hearing and flying, and all powers were bestowed upon them under my orders. The first place was granted to mankind, and my knowledge was placed in his mind. Come one, come all. Let us not be called ungrateful. Let us faithfully serve him and love him, love him, love him.
So beautiful.
So profound.
So profound, so beautiful. In fact, how Swami is giving us a glimpse of the entire process of creation, and in a sense, having known that, what we should do.
So, we should now start contemplating on that which Swami had given it to us. We shall start this process seeing a beautiful video that is shown in Chaitanya Jyoti. This is a very brief version of that, where it starts with the Vedas, which start unraveling the mystery.
Na sadasin no sadasit tadanim na sidrajo no vyoma paroyat kimavari vahkuhakasya sharman ambhah kimasid gahanangabhiram.
Neither non-being nor being was as yet, neither was airy space nor heavens beyond.
न मृत्युरासीदमृतन्न तरहि न रात्र्या अह्न आसीत् प्रकेतः आनीदवातं स्वधया तदेकम् तस्माद्धान्यन्न परः किञ्चनासा.
Neither was there death nor immortality, nor was there any sign then of night or day. Totally windless, alone, the one breathed. Beyond that, indeed, nothing whatever was.
Om Atma va idameka evagra asit nanyat kinchana mishat sa ikshata lokan sruja iti.
In the beginning, there was but the Absolute Self alone. Nothing else was. Brahman willed, let me create the worlds.
There was no one to know who I am till I created this world at my pleasure with one word.
Tasmadva etasmadatmana akashas sambhutaha.
From Om, the five elements came to be. The first was space.
Akashad vayuhu.
From space came air.
Vayoragnihi.
From air came fire.
Agnerapaha.
From fire came water.
Adhyah prithivi.
From water came earth.
Immediately, mountains rose up. Immediately, rivers started running. Earth below and sky over its head. Oceans, seas, lands and watersheds. Sun, moon and desert sands sprang up from nowhere. prove my existence came all forms, beasts and birds flying, human beings, mankind, speaking, hearing, and all powers were bestowed upon them under my orders.
इमानि च क्षुद्रमिश्राणि व बीजानि इतराणि चेतराणि च अंडजानि च जारुजानि च स्वेदजानि चोद्भिजानि च अश्वागावः पुरुषा हस्तिनः यत्किञ्चेदं प्राणिजङ्गमं च पतत्रि च यच्च स्थावरम्.
And Brahman too is all these creatures, large and small, that move upon the earth or fly above.
सर्वं तत्प्रज्ञानेत्रं प्रज्ञाने प्रतिष्ठितम्.
The essence of all these is consciousness. Consciousness is Brahman.
The first place was granted to mankind, and my knowledge was placed in his mind. Come one, come all, let us not be ungrateful called. Let us faithfully serve him and love him, love him, love him.
So that was the beautiful video, and we played a small portion of the video which is generally shown in the Chetan Jyoti. Now in this video we see verses from the Rig Veda, Aitreya Upanishad and so many other Upanishads where they are describing the process of creation. And also we see Swami's letter, the letter which you just read out, so beautifully put to images. When we look at all these mysteries, you know, we have scientists who are trying to explore these same mysteries. Now there is this concept about energy and matter and the dual nature of matter. Is it a particle or is it a wave? And quantum mechanics is trying to unravel that mystery. There are so many mysteries. If you look at some of the terms like consciousness, you look at some of the other terms like Hiranyagarbha, Virat, all these things are there in the spiritual realm. They don't figure in the scientific realm. But these are all mysteries nevertheless. But one thing we can all agree upon is that the basic building blocks of this creation are the 5 elements. And Swami has spoken about 5 elements as the basic building blocks in one of his discourses in the summer course of 1990, where Swami speaks about the reality of who we are. He says you are not just the body, senses, mind, buddhi, but you are the Atman. In the process, in the discourse on the 3 Gunas, Swami speaks about the Panchabhootas. In fact, in South India, there are temples where these Panchabhootas are worshipped. The element of space, Akasha, the first element is Akasha. Akasha is worshipped in Chidambaram, in the Nataraja temple. Then Vayu, Akashat Vayu. So Vayu is worshipped in Kalahasti in Andhra Pradesh. Then Agni. Agni is worshipped in Arunachaleshwar temple in Tiruvannamalai. Then Apaha, water. Water is worshipped in Tiruvannai Kaval temple in Trichy. And then earth, Prithvi. Prithvi is in Ekambareshwar temple in Kanchipuram. So our ancients knew that the 5 elements are vital for creation. And the way these 5 elements combine and come together is a real big mystery. And we have taken some of these points from the 1990 Summer Showers discourse that I just mentioned, and we have tried to put forward and present to you, dear viewers, a glimpse into this mystery. It is quite complicated, and this is just a feeble attempt we are making, but we are praying to Swami that he guides us through this effort of trying to explain the process of creation. What I will do is, I will request the team to play a few slides, and as the slide is changing, I will explain about what the slide is presenting. So, in the beginning, there was nothing. And from nothing, when the Absolute alone existed, that Absolute first interacted with the three gunas. The first guna is the Sattva guna. Sattva guna is represented by white. So you see the white circle around the Absolute. And then we have the red circle, which is the Rajo guna. So the Rajo guna is represented by a red circle, which is around the Absolute. Then we have the Tamo guna. Tamo guna is represented by the black circle. So these three gunas were first, the Absolute expressed itself through these three gunas. So the three gunas were the first level of expression. Now once these three gunas were kind of contemplated upon, if you were to say that, yes, then what happened? The Absolute interacted with the Sattva guna. So when the Absolute manifested through the Sattva guna, the first element was formed, and that is called the Akasha. Now this is not the gross Akasha that we talk about, this is the subtle Akasha, the subtle form of Akasha element.
So this entire process is a precursor to the Akashad Vayuhu Vayuragni.
Exactly. So in the video we saw Akashad Vayu, Vayuragni, Agni Rapaha. This is a precursor to that.
Yes.
So from the Absolute, we have the subtle Akasha. Now from the subtle Akasha, when the Absolute interacts with the Sattva and the Rajas, then you get a subtle Vayu. So the subtle Vayu. Then when it interacts with Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, then you get subtle Agni. Then again when you add a little more Tamas to it, then you get Apaha, subtle Apaha. So then when you add a little more of Tamas to that, then you get subtle Prithvi. So these are the subtle elements. Now these 5 subtle elements are formed when the Absolute interacts with these gunas. Now each of the subtle elements themselves start interacting with the 3 gunas.
Exactly.
So this is the whole game is of permutations and combinations. And so the subtle elements now start interacting with the 3 gunas. Now when the subtle Akasha interacts with the Sattva guna, what we get is Shabda, hearing. The faculty of hearing. The faculty of hearing is created when subtle Akasha interacts with Sattva guna. Then we have the subtle Vayu. When it interacts with Sattva, you get the second Jnanendriya, which is Sparsha, touch. Then subtle Agni, when it interacts with Sattva, you get the third Sabda, Sparsha, Rupa. Then when we have subtle Apaha, that is the water, when it interacts with Sattva, you get Rasa, taste. And then subtle Prithvi, when it interacts with Sattva, you get Gandha, that is smell. Now these Jnanendriyas are the faculty of hearing, faculty of touch, sight, taste, smell, along with the organs. So for example, Shabda symbolizes the ear, then Sparsha is the skin, the touch. Then Rupa is the eyes, the sight. Then Rasa is the taste, represented by the tongue. And then Gandha is the smell, represented by the nose. Now when the same subtle elements interact with the Rajasic guna, then you get the Karmendriyas. So when you can see 5 dots which come out of the red line. So when the subtle Akasha interacts with the red line, which is represented by Rajoguna, then you get a Karmendriya. The first is Vak, speech. So the subtle Akasha gives speech. These are the Karmendriyas. Then the subtle Vayu, when interacts with Rajasic, it gives the hands, gives rise to hand. Then Agni gives rise to the feet. And then we have Apaha and Prithvi. When they interact, they give rise to the excretory system in the body. So all these Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas are formed with the interaction of the subtle elements with the Sattvic and Rajasic gunas. Now when you combine the Sattvic aspects of the 5 subtle elements, for example, when you combine the Sattvic aspect of subtle Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Apa and Prithvi all together, they form the Antakarnas. So the next slide shows how 5 SE, that is the 5 subtle elements plus the
Interacting with
sattvic
sattva.
with plus sattva, it gives rise to the antakarnas. Now same 5 elements, same 5 subtle elements, when they interact with rajas, they give rise to the pancha pranas. So what are these antakarnas? The next slide shows the antakarnas are mano, buddhi, chitta, ahankara. So the manas, buddhi, chitta, ahankara, these are the antakarnas. And the 5 panchabhut pranas are prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. So these are the pancha pranas. So the subtle elements with their interaction of the sattvic and the rajasic gives rise to all these things. The pancha, the karmendriyas, the jnanendriyas, the antakarnas and the pancha pranas. Now the same subtle elements, when they interact with the tamasic guna, this is very interesting because, and this is where the complication starts.
Equation starts now.
Equation starts now because this enters into a process called panchikritam. In modern science, we would call it permutations and combinations. So what happens is, on interaction with the tamasic guna, each subtle element breaks up into 2 halves.
Yes.
And each one half remains as it is. The other half breaks into 1/8.
4 1/8.
4 1/8. So these elements, so for example, you can see these are represented in the diagram. Subtle akasha is broken up into 1/2 of subtle akasha plus 4 of 1/8. And then starts the permutation combination of this entire process called panchikritam. Now for making this whole process a little bit easier for our viewers, what I thought is we could try out a little live demonstration of how these subtle elements combine and form the 5 gross elements.
So now we are able to see those.
So now we are able to see. So now this is molding dough that children use for making different toys. So now we are going back to this dough to make the 5 elements. So if you see this, this is representing the subtle akasha. Now the subtle akasha, let us break it into 2, and then you make this same subtle akasha into 4 elements.
4 elements.
So the subtle akasha has broken it into 1/2 and then 4 parts of 1/8. So we have 4 parts. Now the same applies for the other 4 elements as well.
So you have the 4 1/8
of the subtle akasha.
Subtle
now this is the same thing that we have done. It's like a cooking show when we are actually demonstrating how. So this is how the creation was formed. So here we have the subtle akasha, and then you have the 1/8 of
4 1/8
of the
subtle akasha.
Now what happens is this half of subtle akasha combines with 1/8 of akasha, vayu, agni, apaha and prithvi. So when these combine and you make them into one element, this forms the gross akasha. So the same process continues with, you take vayu and then you can form 1/8 of each of these. Then let me take agni. Agni again combined with 1/8 of each of these. So when vayu combines with this process called panchikritam, that forms
a gross vayu.
So then when we make agni, when we combine this forms the gross agni. So gross akasha, gross vayu, gross agni.
Now gross apa. Don't
miss out an element.
Yes. Otherwise we will be
in fact, you remember that incident when somebody was telling Swami that Swami, you live just on the elements, because Swami would eat very little. And Swami, you are sustained by the elements. Swami said, no. The 5 elements are sustained by me.
I sustain the 5 elements.
I sustain the 5 elements. So this is Akasha, Vayu, Agni and this is apaha, this is gross apaha, and then we get finally prithvi.
Prithvi.
So this is the process of panchikritam, and when we see all these small elements are combined and they form the gross 5 elements. So when we talk about the 5 elements, the Panchabhootas that actually form us, this entire process has gone in. And when we talk about the 5 elements, we realize one thing, that the entire creation is made up of these 5 elements. And these 5 elements are present in everybody. And these 5 elements in the creation, for example, Akasha is represented by the Pranava,
Pranava, Om.
And Vayu is represented by
Prana Shakti.
Prana Shakti. Then Apaha is water, is represented by consciousness.
Agni.
Agni is
alertness.
Alertness. Then Apaha, water,
is awareness.
And then Prithvi
is Chaitanya.
So these are the ways in which these elements are represented in the world today.
Yes.
So this is the beautiful process of creation where Swami actually explained in this discourse the whole process of how the subtle elements become the gross elements and how these gross elements combine to form this universe. Swami again teaches us in many ways. This is one of the ways that he taught us and expounded the divine mysteries, and there is yet another way in which he teaches us, isn't it?
So beautiful, Prakash. Actually, when we see, we have done so much of exercise.
Right.
All this is from clay.
Correct.
Finally, it matters. It goes back to clay.
Correct.
Whatever may be the color, whatever may be the content in this, but it goes back to clay.
Right.
So Swami beautifully tells in the letter. Now we are going into the next aspect.
Mm-hmm.
After knowing this, what is it that we have to do?
Right.
So beautifully Swami puts it, my knowledge was placed in his mind.
Correct.
Having made man as the crest jewel of his creation, Swami had placed that knowledge in our minds. So then, what is that knowledge that we have to ponder upon? What is that knowledge that we have to contemplate upon?
Mm-hmm.
There is a beautiful verse in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, verse 28, which explains all of this. Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram vinashyatsu avinashyantam yapashyati sapashyati.
Right.
It tells that every inch of this creation, every aspect of this creation is filled with the Lord embedded in it.
Mm-hmm.
He has installed in every inch of this creation equally. And then, when is our knowledge complete? A person is considered knowledgeable when he thinks that vinashyatsu avinashyantam.
Mm-hmm.
In the destructible, he is present as the indestructible.
Right.
Once you realize that inherent oneness in the entirety of this creation, then the knowledge which is placed in man's mind is fulfilled.
Very beautiful. Very beautiful. In fact, when we were seeing this whole process of Panchikritam, and when we saw all this, one thing which again Swami tells in that discourse is, he says that when we look at the subtle elements of Akasha, for example, when it interacts with the sattvic aspect, it forms the ear, the organ of the ear. When it interacts with the rajasic aspect, it forms the vak, the tongue. So what he says is, sattva is always that takes inside, and rajas is always that goes outside. But the problem today is, because you are talking about the experience of it and the concept of mind. So where this whole problem starts, we have the body, we have the senses, we have the mind. Now when the senses which are outward, what is going outward, the sattva, the rajasic aspect is what has to go out and the sattva has to come in. So what Swami is saying today is, it's going opposite. Rajas is going in and Sattva is going out. When Rajas is going in and Sattva is going out, you have all the problems. But if you look at the senses by themselves, they are just instruments. It is the mind. The mind is guiding these senses, and the mind has to set these senses on the track. Now, one of the best ways of kind of guiding this mind, one of the best ways of focusing this mind on something which we all love is the form of the Lord. And when the Lord comes in a human form, the experience is so much better. It is so sweet, so much sweeter, isn't it?
So, to have a glimpse of that experience and what exactly we have to see inside, what is it that we have to see outside?
Right.
We shall know it by an experience of a devotee.
Okay.
This devotee is from Pune. He loved Swami so much that he wanted to leave everything at the age of 20 and settle in Prasanthi Nilayam and offer his services to Swami. Any small service would do and make him happy to stay with Bhagawan. Swami assured him, but kept postponing because the right time had to come.
Right.
So then the process went on. He told, I will give you something very, very big. Then he was not convinced with Swami was telling. And then he went on to pester Swami, Swami, please, I want to stay with you in Prasanthi Nilayam and offer my service. Then Swami once, he called him, he told, I am always there with you, in you, around you, above you, below you. Have that faith. And then Swami granted him an interview in which a very unusual thing happened. Swami touched his head and he told, I am there in your head.
Okay.
Swami touched his eyes and told, I am there in your eyes. Swami touched his ears and told him, I am there in your ears. Swami touched his mouth and told him, I am there in your mouth. Swami touched his shoulders and told, I am there in your arms. Swami touched his feet and told, I am there in your feet too. This is what you have to contemplate upon. The person was very, very blissful. With that experience, he went out of the interview room. This he took as an opportunity. When Swami had gone on an outing, he was contemplating and meditating upon the fact. So as he was sitting in the meditation, after a few minutes, Swami had come and he was standing right in front of that man who was meditating. So this devotee opened his eyes and Swami asked him, what are you doing? And he told Swami, I am meditating upon you. Then Swami showed, are you meditating on this? Are you thinking of this? Yes, Swami, I am thinking that, I am meditating that you are everywhere. So this Swami is everywhere? Then Swami told, you have to close your eyes and meditate and contemplate upon the fact that Swami is present everywhere. And you have to open your eyes and experience the fact that Swami is everywhere. So this is the beautiful lesson that Swami had taught this person that day. And this is the kind of experience that all of us need to imbibe. Having known Bhagawan, having heard him, having experienced him, we should start extending that experience by seeing him in all that is around us.
Very nice. In fact, there is this beautiful incident, experience of one Mr. Indreswara Rao, where, how Swami reveals himself.
Exactly.
So this one way of teaching is when he tells in the discourses, when he comes and personally guides you. The other way is he just gives an experience where the mind has to just believe. The mind doesn't have any other choice. Let us listen to this beautiful experience where this devotee has experienced Bhagawan as the creator, sustainer, and the one who destroys.
స్వామిని ఏమనుకుంటున్నారా అన్నారు. స్వామిని భగవంతుడు అనుకున్నాను స్వామి అన్నారు. భగవంతుడు అంటే ఏంటిరా అన్నారు. భగవంతుడు అంటే స్వామి, భగవంతుడు అంటే భగవంతుడే స్వామి అన్నారు. అంటే భగవంతుడు అంటే ఊరికే భగవంతుడు అంటే భగవంతుడు వినరించని తెలియదు. చెప్పు పర్వాలేదు చెప్పు అన్నారు. స్వామి అంటే ఎందుకన్నారంటే నమ్మకం ఉందా లేదని అడగడానికి అడిగారు. స్వామి గురించి ఏమనుకుంటున్నావు అనేటువంటిది. అంటే తెలియేమో దాంట్లో విషయాలని చెప్పేసానని ఆ సందర్భంలో ఏమనుకుంటే స్వామి భగవంతుడు అనుకున్నాను స్వామి అని. బాగా భగవంతుడు అంటే ఏంటి అన్నారు. మళ్ళీ జస్ట్
అంటే భగవంతుడంటే స్వామి భగవంతుడు స్వామి అన్నాను. చెప్పు అన్నారు. సృష్టి స్థితి లయం చేస్తాడు స్వామి అన్నాను. ఊరికే పుస్తకాలు చదివిందండి. సృష్టి అంటే ఏంటిరా అన్నారు. సృష్టి అంటే స్వామి ఈ ప్రపంచం అంతా ఆయన సృష్టించిందన్నాను. స్థితి అంటే ఏంటంటే పోషించే స్వామి చెప్పాను. లైవ్ అంటే బెర్త్ చేసుకున్న స్వామి తనలో లైక్ చేస్తున్నారు. నువ్వు చూసావా అన్నారు స్వామి. నువ్వు చూసావా అన్నారు. క్షమించాలి స్వామి చెప్పాను అని ఈ స్వామి తాంబూలం వెయిన్స్ తోటి లేడీ వెళ్ళారండి అంతకు ముందే.
లేడీని తయారు చేశారు.
ఇంకా హెడ్ ఫార్మేషన్ అవ్వలేదు దానికి. అల్లికలో తోక అయింది, 4 కాళ్ళు అయింది, బాడీ అయింది. దాన్ని దగ్గరే ఉన్నాను చూస్తున్నాను. ఇలా పెట్టింది ఏం చెప్పరా అన్నారు. లేడీ స్వామి అన్నాను. సరిగ్గా చెప్పన్నారు. నేను లేడీ స్వామి అన్నాను. తీశారు. అది చిలక అయిందండి. అది
ఆ ఈనెలతో చేసింది, ఈనెలతో చిలక అయింది.
అది డేర్ కాకుండా చిలక కింద మారిపోయింది. అది చిలక అయింది. అది ఇదేనా సృష్టి అన్నారు స్వామి. స్థితి అంటే తెలుసా అన్నారు. తెలియ స్వామి అన్నారు. ఇలా అన్నారు. ఇలా అన్నారు.
చెయ్యి కదిపారు.
ఈ చేతిలో నుంచి ప్యారెట్ రూపం ధరించి వెళ్ళి ఇలా కిటికీలు ఉన్నాయండి అక్కడ ఎదురు. దాని మీద వాళ్ళని కిటికీ మీద. ఇదేనా స్థితి అని అన్నారు స్వామి. లైవ్ అంటే తెలుసా అన్నారు. తెలియ స్వామి అన్నారు. ఇలాగన్నారు. డిజైపర్ అయిపోయిందండి. అది అయిపోయింది. డిజైపర్ అయిపోయింది. ఇదేరా సృష్టి స్థితి లైవ్ అంటే అని అంటూ నా మహిమ తెలియక అందరూ ఈ మాయలు పడరి, ఈ మాయలు పడరి.
Wow. Once you have experienced something like that, then the mind just goes for a spin. There's nothing else. You know, this is so beautiful. Swami takes the pain of explaining to us and at appropriate times gives us this experience. And sometimes what Swami does is when he's with the students, how to make the students understand these deep concepts. Sometimes, you know, when we had the opportunity to sit with Swami, we would ask Swami all sorts of questions. And Swami would very lovingly give answers. And the best part of the Lord is, he is always in that awareness of, you know, explaining the greatest divine mysteries. And here is a clip where some students are asking Swami a few questions, very deep spiritual questions, trying to understand these divine mysteries. And how Swami gives answers which are absolutely relatable and which are very practical. The way Swami explains it is very practical. There is no need of any explanation. This clip is so beautiful and all of us can just enjoy that we are so fortunate to listen to Swami explaining some of these deep concepts. Now we will play a clip from Swami's trip in Kodaikanal.
Please help me. Swami, you said, Swami, God created the universe, everything God created. But before the universe was created, before this consciousness was there, Swami, was God there before the universe?
That consciousness is God.
That consciousness is God.
God is not separated. Consciousness is everywhere. In you, with you, above you, below you, around you. Without consciousness, you are not. Consciousness is everywhere. That is God. I am telling you, you are also God. You are also God. You are also God. My words with any difference, no any time. God's created क्या संकल्प. एक आत्मा, first संकल्प. एको हम बहुश्याम. That is first.
It's the will of God first.
एको हम बहुश्याम. నేను ఒక్కడే అనేకం కావాలా.
One manifested into many.
ఎట్లా?
How?
Small example. Correct direct example नहीं. Examples नहीं. थोड़ा equal and
near examples.
Near example. Too high. Too एक ही है. एक वो हम बहुश्याम. मैं अनेक हो सकता है. I want wife. Second. That. I want wife. wife. Next, I want son. Next, I want daughter. Son. ये इतना फैमिली किधर से आया? हमारा संकल्प। एक हूँ, बहुत से हूँ, मैं अनेक।
I become many.
ऐसा नहीं, भगवान कहने को एक हूँ बहुत से, एक ही गॉड से कॉन्शियसनेस अनेक रूप में जा सकता है।
God, one consciousness, takes many forms.
वाटर एक ही मड है, कितना मड, कितना पॉट्स, कितना प्लेट्स, कितना कप्स, कितना ये कर सकता है। इतना कप्स, इतना पॉट्स, इतना प्लेट्स, इतना किधर से आया? मट से आया। मट अलग, पाट अलग नहीं। ऐसा consciousness and you are also same. Not only part. Part में मट है, चेपुनु वाला में।
Consciousness is everywhere. You are also consciousness. That's why Bhagavan says, you are also God. And you are the pot. The consciousness is inside, within you. A potter makes out of the mud, a pot, plate, cup, everything he makes, so many things. Out of the same mud. And the pot and mud are not separate. In the pot also there is mud.
Pot and mud is not separate.
Pot and mud are not separate.
Not separate.
Not separate.
God and create, the other create.
God and creation are not separate.
But useful, useless, that is difference.
But there is difference when
Parts हो, दूसरा use कर सकता है.
pots people make use of the pots.
वाटर स्टॉक करता है, राइस बॉयल करता है, मटन बॉयल करता है, डॉग बॉयल करता है, और दूसरा यदि पार्ट्स को पानी डालता है, प्लांट.
Some plants, potted plants. The pots can be used for various purposes. Out of the mud, so many pots are made, and pots can be used for different purposes.
Pot and mud is same.
But there's difference in using it. But the mud and pot is like that, same, made of the same material.
No, Swami, even we are God, Swami. That's what you're telling. Then why should an individual who is God, why should he strive to reach God?
నేనే భగవంతుడు అయినప్పుడు నేను భగవంతుడిని చేరటం ఏమిటి?
నీ భగవంతుడిని అనేటువంటి కాన్ఫిడెన్స్ పూర్తి చేయనక్కర్లేదు.
When once you have full confidence you are God, there is no question of reaching God.
That is reaching.
That is reaching. The very awareness that you are God is.
I am God. There is no any reaching.
Nothing reaching.
Reaching है नहीं.
No reaching.
Only one. इतना वो स्टेज है ना, no any reaching अलग नहीं, दूसरा person अलग नहीं.
At that stage, when you know that you are God, there is no question of reaching.
No reaching. No second.
No second. Only that.
Second.
No second.
एकम एव अद्वितीयं ब्रह्म. Not two only.
Only one, not two. Only one.
वो स्टेज नहीं आता, वो कौन सी चर्चा?
That stage you have not got it. Therefore you have to reach. So you have to reach.
Go here.
You have to go.
Tell me how to reach.
Huh?
How to reach.
देखो अभी आफ्टर लंच, आफ्टर डिनर, टिफिन स्वामी जी के पास जल्दी आ सकता है, ट्राई करता है. एक किस्म में बैक सीट में हो सकता है, एक किस्म में फ्रंट सीट में मिल सकता है. तुम्हारी इंटरेस्ट, प्रेम, दैट इज लव, दैट इज. तुमको कितना जल्दी आता है बैठता है, दूर बैठता है.
Boss.
इसे प्रत्यक्ष स्वामी जी के नियर कितना जल्दी जाने की बहुत इच्छा है. इनर फोर्स
Swami.
ఇంటర్నల్ ఒక అఫెక్షన్ బాగా ఉంచి ఉంటే నేను వచ్చేసేస్తావు దగ్గరికి. ఇంటర్నల్ అఫెక్షన్ సరిగా లేకపోతే
The question is how to reach God. Bhagavan gives us an example of just what is happening now. Worldly example. Now we are there in the dining hall. When Bhagavan sits here, we will run immediately, we will dash, we will rush at high speed and take the first seat. Why? Because of the interest we have. When there is affection internal affection, then we will go there. When we don't have that interest, when there is no internal affection, we will have the back seat.
ఇక్కడ ఇంట్రెస్ట్ ఎఫెక్షన్ రెండు ఉంటుంటే ఫోర్స్ చేస్తుంది.
When there is interest and affection coupled together, it will force you.
You know science? What science? See, our Indians rockets करता है.
Indians prepare rockets. Rockets.
అది एक శ్రీనగర్ కాదు,
శ్రీహరికోట.
శ్రీహరికోటకు తీసుకుపోతుంది. అక్కడ దానికి తగినటువంటి ఫౌండేషన్ దానికి ఎక్విప్మెంట్ అంతా అక్కడ ఉన్నారు.
All the equipment of the rocket are all located there in Sriharikota.
అది పోయే ముందులో ఎంత బ్యాక్ కొడుతుందో అంత ఫ్రంట్కి పోతుంది.
It just drives backwards, pushes backwards, and it will proceed with double as much as recedes.
అయితే అదే కాదు, యారో
It's like an arrow shape.
ఎంత లాగి కొట్టేస్తుందో అంత స్పీడ్.
The more you pull it back, the faster it proceeds forwards.
కనుక ఎంత నీవు ఆ ప్రేమను ఎంత పూర్తి దాగి చేస్తావు అంత స్పీడ్.
So beautifully, there are no words to explain because this is an experience listening to Swami.
Exactly.
And there is no holding back for Swami. When Swami tells, my life is my message, he lives it to the word.
Right.
When Swami is so confidently telling all the boys that when you love someone, you are so eager, you are so energetic to come nearer to the Lord. What does the Lord have for us? That much more love he has for us.
Right.
Everything boils down to that love. And what best experience can we have other than experiencing the love of Swami? I am reminded of a very, very beautiful incident that happened to Shri Ramana Rao Garu, an elderly devotee of Swami. When he was new to Swami, during one of the Dasara celebrations, after the Purnahuti and after Swami did the Prokshanam, it was almost 11 o'clock in the morning. And Swami was sweating so profusely, and this devotee, in all his love for Swami, he wanted Swami to take rest. So Swami retired for the day, for the morning session, and this devotee thought, anyway Swami was tired, I would come a little bit late. And he came at 3 o'clock. By the time he had come, Swami was like beaming with joy and so eager to go and give darshan to the devotees. This devotee sat at the feet of Swami. When he started pressing Swami's feet, Swami had temperature. Then he pleaded, Swami, why don't you take rest? You're burning. Then Swami beautifully told, rest is rust and dust. Why do you think I have come here? All the devotees are waiting for me. I am going to have their darshan.
Oh.
It's not that they are having my darshan.
My God.
I am so eager to give them darshan.
I am going for their darshan.
Their darshan.
Oh. That's so.
I think that explains it all.
Because he is seeing himself in everybody.
Everyone.
So he is just going to see himself. And that is the awareness with which Swami has led his entire life. If you look at this entire session that we had today, we tried to present to you, dear viewers, some of the glimpses of these divine mysteries. But as we said right in the beginning, yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. Your body, your senses, your mind cannot comprehend these divine mysteries. But in the letter, as Swami said, come one, come all. Let us not be ungrateful. Let us love him, love him, love him. After all that Swami has done for us and is doing for us and will always do for us, with the spirit of doing it for himself without seeing any difference, all that we have to do is control this mind, divert this mind towards the Lord. And once the mind is diverted and immersed in the Lord, you will start seeing this form of the Lord in this entire creation. And I think that is the goal, that is the definition of prema. The definition of prema is to see that same God present in this entire universe. So the whole purpose of trying to understand these divine mysteries is to reach a state when we realize that the entire creation is part of the divine. Swami, all we can do today is pray to you that you use us as perfect instruments. Swami would often say, be like the flute, be hollow, let the mind die. Just offer yourself to the Lord so that He can take you, and then through you He can play His divine music. We would like to conclude this session with a beautiful song on the same theme, where we are praying to the Lord to take us and make us perfect instruments in His hands. Thank you so much. Jai Sai Ram.
Sai Ram.
మోహన మురళి Pune.